We were talking about the story of Avshalom and how Avshalom's death and Avshalom's sins and his punishments. And we had mentioned about this interesting, it's a Gemara, and we also mentioned the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, which basically the Gemara says that Avshalom saw it, Nivka Gehenim Mitachtov. It says the Nivka She'oil Mitachtov, that when Avshalom was hanging, he saw the She'oil, the grave under him. And the understanding maybe is the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer maybe explains that more, because in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer it says that Avshalom saw that he was going to inherit Gehenim. He was heading for Gehenim. And basically the concept seems to be that he was hanging and he could have let himself go free by using a sword and cutting his hair, but then he would have fallen into hell. Or then he would have maybe not fallen into hell, that maybe that's maybe that doesn't mean physically he would have fallen there, but it means that ultimately his when he died, he would end up going to hell. And by waiting and not giving himself this release and salvation, this would sort of be his atonement or partial atonement, or he would, he wouldn't automatically be subject to hell. So that was the idea. In other words, he saw it in front of his eyes that hell was opened up right for him, and he had to make this choice, and he decided to let himself, so to speak, be subject to whatever they do to him. Yes, Ben?
When you say hell, do you mean spiritually? Because physically he might have gotten killed just by dropping if it's high enough,
Well, he was sitting on a mule. I don't know if you fall from that height.
No, the mule went.
I know, but he was sitting that height.
Not too high. You are right.
It's not like the branch lifted him up to an airplane height. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It didn't lift him up any higher. So he was the height of sitting on a mule.
Yeah.
It would seem that I don't know if he would have
6
died.
feet. If you let your feet down, it's only 3 feet.
Exactly. Okay. So
Right.
I doubt that would have been an issue, but that's what's going on here with Avshalom. Now, the Gemara. The Gemara also in the Mishnah, they mentioned that everything was midah keneged midah. It was measure for measure, which means that Avshalom sinned with the 10 concubines. He got smote with these 10 soldiers. They either stabbed him with their swords, or they beat him with their spears, or they stabbed him with their spears or beat him with their spears. But basically there were 10 spears involved in this end of Avshalom's life. And also the three spears that Yoav thrust into him as well, that was also connected to a punishment for Avshalom tricking 3 groups of people: his father, the Bezdin, and the Jewish people. So this is brought in the Mishnah, where it talks about measure for measure, that Avshalom's punishment was exactly as he had caused to others. Yes, Ben?
How did he sin with the concubines? Didn't Avner also sin with the concubine of Shaul? Is that a sin in some way, or how is that going?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that Shaul died, was killed.
Yeah.
And Avner claimed that this was permissible permissible for him to live with this concubine. But even if it wasn't permissible, keep in mind, she is no longer a married woman.
Yeah.
What Avner did.
Are the concubines usually married?
But no, Shaul died. Shaul was killed.
I know, but I'm
so
saying,
she was not a married person.
Yeah. Well, was
But
she married?
here,
was she married to Shaul?
well, concubine is married.
Oh, that's what I'm
Concubine
asking.
is
Yeah.
a certain level of marriage, right? Here, Avshalom lived with 10 concubines of David. David's still alive.
Yeah.
So
But I
this
thought
was
they're not real wives. They're concubines.
they don't have a ksuba. They don't have
Yeah.
the full
Yeah.
legalities of a ksuba, but they are,
I thought maybe because it's a king's pilegesh that it's a sin. It's a sin towards the king.
So it seems to be both. It is a sin towards the king, but you have to understand only a king is allowed in a pilegesh as well. That it's a special law for a king to have, that he could have a pilegesh, a concubine.
I see.
So the story here is that Avshalom is killed, and we're gonna go read it inside. Let's begin. Let's begin with
with 5 or 6.
We're in chapter 18, and let's begin with verse 12.
Well,
actually, verse 10. Verse 10. So verse 10 says, chapter 18, verse 10. So one man saw and told Yoav, he said, "Behold, I saw Avshalom hanging from an elm." Yoav then said to the man who had told him, "And if you saw this, why did you not strike him there down to the ground? I would have been obligated to reward you with 10 silver pieces and 1 belt." So we read that yesterday. And verse 12 is, the man said to Yoav, "Even if I were weighing out 1,000 silver pieces upon my hands, I would not send forth my hand against the king's son. For in our own earshot, the king commanded you and Avishai and Ittai, saying, whoever finds him, take care of the boy of Avshalom." And we spoke yesterday about that, taking care of the boy and not killing Avshalom. "Even if I had acted deceitfully on my own, nothing remains hidden from the king, and you would stand aside." So verse 13 is really where we are up to. Verse 13. This is where we were up to, that even if I had acted deceitfully on my own, nothing remains hidden from the king. That means the king would have known. So what we have here is this man who saw Avshalom stuck, hanging from his hair. He said, "I would never kill Avshalom because the king told us not to. And even if I would have done this, which would have been deceitful, nothing remains hidden from the king. I'm sure the king would find out that it was me. I'm sure the king would find out that it was me, because the king has Ruach HaKodesh. And you would stand aside." Now, what does that mean? And you would stand aside. What it means is that you're telling me you would have rewarded me? What would have happened when the king is angry? Are you going to stick up for me? So I would go and kill Avshalom. Avshalom is creating this rebellion against David. So I'm going to go kill Avshalom. And you're telling me that this would have been the best thing for me to do. And now the king might get angry later at me. And would you have stood at my side? No, you would stand aside. You would have gone away and said, "I don't know this guy. This guy went and killed Avshalom." You wouldn't have stuck up for me. You would have just stood on the side and said, "Ha ha." You're in trouble with the king, not my fault. So you would not have stood up for me. So what he's telling Yoav is that, this is the wrong thing to do. How could I go and kill Avshalom? I know, of course, it sounds good to kill Avshalom because it would end the rebellion, but this is not what the king wants us to do. And I don't even think you would stand. You wouldn't even stand up for me. Now, Yoav then said, I will not beg you anymore. He then took 3 staves in his hand and thrust them into Avshalom's heart, yet he was still alive in the midst of the elm. So for some reason, Yoav's stabbing him did not work. He was still alive. 10 soldiers, the armor bearers of Yoav, circled around, and the term here is beat. They beat Avshalom and killed him. The Mishnah uses the term, they used their spear into him. So it seems a little unclear if it was, did they hit him with their spears or did they stab him? From the Mishnah, it sounds like they stabbed him with it, with the spears, and ultimately, of course, he died. Yoav then blew the show and killed him. It says Vayemisu. So they killed Avshalom, and Yoav then blew the shofar. We're in verse 16, chapter 18, verse 16. Yoav then blew the shofar. The people refrained from chasing after Israel, for Yoav restrained the people. And what that means is that we're using the term here, Yisrael, to refer to the tribes that were not with David. David basically was considered the tribe of Yehuda. And even within Yehuda, not everyone maybe was with David, but at least the term, we're using the concept of David being supported by Yehuda and Binyamin maybe, and then everyone else was with Avshalom. And Yoav did not want, they refrained from chasing after Israel. And in the Hebrew, the term is Vayoshav ha'am meradoif acharei Yisrael. He prevented them from running after the Israelites, meaning the people that were with Avshalom. And yes, Ben.
Yeah, I see I'm reading that he stuck 3 sticks into his heart.
Right, but he didn't die.
Right.
It sounds like it was maybe near his heart.
Yeah, exactly. I guess it takes a little bit, but they went and killed him right away anyhow. So
yeah, it is surprising that how did he live through that? It definitely seems surprising, especially Yoav he's the commander in chief.
Maybe he was aiming for the heart, but didn't hit him right into the heart,
Yeah, so. But this is the top commander. Must have been sharpshooter. He must have been quite
right.
How it sounds surprising why Avshalom didn't die right away. So verse 17 says they took Avshalom's body and threw it in the forest into the great pit, and they erected a very large mound of stones. Meanwhile, all of Israel fled, each man to his tent. So all of Israel fled is referring to the Israelites, the people that were with Avshalom. They fled. Why did they flee? Because they were nervous. They were rebelling against David, so to speak. So David's people theoretically could have chased after them and killed them for being rebellious. But so they sort of wanted to run away. And in the meantime, the people with David, the soldiers on David's side, they had killed Avshalom, and now they threw his body in this great pit, in this bar. And hapachas hagadol is the Hebrew term. the pachas, which is
I
a
think
pit,
they
a hole
say
in the
that
ground.
he prepared it for him.
No, 1 second. The next verse, you gotta wait. Verse 18. Now, verse 18 is Avshalom had undertaken in his lifetime and erected for himself the pillar that is in the valley of the king. For he said, I have no son. This is in order that my name should be remembered. He called the pillar by his name, and it is called Avshalom's monument until this day. It's called Yad Avshalom. If you go to Yerushalayim, I believe I saw it right near Har Hazesim, right at the right below Ir David. If you go in that valley, you see Zechariah's grave, and you see Yad Avshalom over there. And then if you walk further, I think you see Rabbi Avadia Mibartanura. And if I'm not mistaken, we walked along and we saw, I was there a year ago, and I think I saw the Yad Avshalom. Now, that Yad Avshalom is Avshalom's, it seems seemingly that's Avshalom's monument that he had built. Why did he build it? Because he thought that he would have no memorial for himself because because he didn't have any children, and no one to continue his honor, his memory. So he figured at least he'll build himself a nice fancy monument. Now, there are two ways of understanding these verses. According to the commentaries, they have there's two paths they take. One path is he made this monument, but he didn't get buried in it. He was stuck in they made the mound in the forest, and he was thrown over there, and his monument was stuck without him. So he might have made his monument, but it didn't work. It doesn't always work. A person might mensch tracht und Gott lacht, is a Yiddish saying. A person plans and Hashem laughs. So he planned on having this nice, beautiful monument for where people are going to remember him. In the meantime, he's buried in some pit in the forest, and his monument is basically a waste. It's not really his monument. But there is a different understanding, and that is that he actually was thrown into the pit in the forest, but then they took him to this monument where he had built for himself, and they actually buried him there. So that's an alternative interpretation. Yes, Mordechai.
Yes, I also happen to be a Balko and I know that in juxtaposition to what we're discussing, the last pasuk of Parshas Matos is V'nova halach v'yokodes kanas v'espinosa v'yigra la novach bishmo. Novach, the commentators say that since Novach didn't have any sons,
so he made the city.
He named the city Novach.
City after him. Right. Thank you. Yeah, very good connection. Wait, was there a Yair ben Menashe also that had a similar thing?
Similar also with the Yair.
I think Yair ben Menashe.
Yeah, also Yair ben Menashe.
So, in any event, the story is that Avshalom, Yoav had killed Avshalom here, and there's this monument that's called the Yad Avshalom. Now, how did Yoav do this? This is really a complicated story. Yoav killed Avshalom, even though David HaMelech made it very clear that he did not want Avshalom to get killed. So there seems to be some type of some type of unclear issue that went on over here, where David, we thought, was very clear about what he wanted, and Yoav rebukes this person for not killing Avshalom, and he himself goes and kills him.
It's not the first time.
commander. What is that? It's not the
Not
first
the
time that
first
Yoav
time.
that Yoav doesn't listen.
Right. Doesn't listen and kills the person, like Avner too.
Right. True. True. Now, what's interesting is that if you look in the book of Melachim, in chapter 2, David, which we mentioned yesterday, David tells his son Shlomo HaMelech to finish off things that he wasn't able to do. He wants Shlomo HaMelech to punish those that needed to be punished. And he doesn't mention Yoav's punishment for killing Avshalom. He mentions Yoav, and he mentions that he wants Shlomo HaMelech to punish Yoav, but he doesn't say because of Avshalom. He says because of Avner and Amasa. If you look in chapter 2 of Kings 1, the first book of Kings. Furthermore, you know what Yoav, the son of Tzeruiah, did to me, what he did to the 2 commanders of the armies of Israel, to Avner and to Amasa, whom he killed, shedding blood of war in peacetime, and placing the blood of war in the girdle that is on his loins and on his shoes that are on his feet. You shall act according to your wisdom and do not allow his white hair to go down to the grave in peace. So he wants Yoav to be punished for 2 things that he did, but not because he killed Avshalom. So that's an interesting point. And yesterday we mentioned about Shimei, and it's in verse 8. Behold, with you is Shimei, the son of Gera, the Benjamin from Bachurim. He cursed me with a powerful curse on that day. I went to Machanayim, but he came down to me at the Jordan, and I swore to him by Hashem, saying, I will not put you to death by the sword, but now you shall not hold him guiltless, for you are a wise man. He tells his son, David tells his son, King David tells King Solomon, and you will know what you are to do with him, and you shall bring his white hair to the grave in blood. David lay with his forefathers, and was buried in the city of David. So this is from the chapter 2 of Kings. So what we see here is that Yoav did not listen to David, but it doesn't seem like David is going to punish Yoav for killing Avshalom.
Yeah.
So
but the other 2 were his competitors.
So Yoav did.
One was Shaul's and one was Avshalom's.
Right.
Yeah.
But why didn't Yoav listen to David? So it seems that he must have had a very valid argument. Now, this seems to prove that he has a valid argument, because otherwise David would have wanted Yoav to be punished. The fact that he's not punishing Yoav for this means that maybe Yoav didn't do the wrong thing. Maybe what he did was not necessarily wrong, even though he didn't listen to David, but he wasn't necessarily wrong. And what it seems to be, at least one of the commentaries mentions that the reason why he's not punished is because what he realized, this is what's necessary in order to avoid bloodshed. From many people will die. If we don't kill Avshalom, what's going to happen? We'll capture Avshalom. What's going to happen? They're going to continue fighting. Avshalom's people will continue a war. That's going to cause numerous bloodshed, numerous deaths at least among Avshalom's people, and possibly amongst David's people. And so in order to end the rebellion completely, he needed to kill this one person, Avshalom. And when you kill Avshalom, they're not going to be fighting more because they don't have another candidate. See, if Avshalom is still alive, then they still have their candidate that they could make riots and try to convince everyone that we want Avshalom back. But if Avshalom is dead, so then that basically ends this war. So this seems to be Yoav's understanding, even though he understood that David had his emotional interest in having Avshalom alive, but for the purpose of life and death, Yoav felt that this was the necessary thing to do at the moment. Yes, Ezra.
I don't think that that's a justification. In the reading that you had with regards to Shlomo HaMelech with respect to what he had to do, I don't think that David would have mentioned the situation with Yoav. The reason why he wouldn't have is because for Shlomo it would have been some kind of a conflict within him, because number one, if he were to say something to the effect that I want you to take care of Yoav because of the situation with Avshalom, Shlomo might have said to himself, why? I mean, he did me a favor. He killed this guy who was trying to take my position as king, and so he might have had some kind of hakarat tov, and therefore not had a 100% reason why to take care of Yoav. So the thing that David had to do was to present an ironclad case against Yoav, and the thing that he had that would not have been a conflict of some kind to his son, because Yoav could have turned around and said to Shlomo, listen, I did you a favor, so how the heck can you kill me for that? So therefore, David had to say to Shlomo, these are the reasons why you need to take care of him. He did these things which should not have been done. You know, it may be true that he also did this as well to Avshalom, but that's neither here nor there as far as you're concerned. What you are concerned with is that he killed two people in time of peace, and that's incorrect, and you need to take care of him because of that.
So I like what you're saying, Ezra. It sounds like a good point. Keep in mind that the other two people who Yoav killed were also people who were involved in fighting David's kingdom, at least at some point in their life. And so they also, you could have a similar argument. Again, you have a good point, but keep in mind that it's not as strong of a point, being that the other two people that he did tell Yoav, he did tell Shlomo HaMelech that Yoav did, were also people of rebellious nature which were against David, which ultimately were against Shlomo, not in the fullest extent. So you have a point, but it's I'm just saying it's not as powerful as it would have been had he claimed other claims against Yoav. The claims against Yoav were Avner, who was the person who was helping out Ishbosheth, and Amasa, who was the commander in chief for Avshalom. So so it's it is similar. You could claim similar things, that Shlomo HaMelech was actually happy with what Yoav did. You could claim that, and yet David trusts Shlomo HaMelech to punish Yoav. So so you have a point there, but at the same time, I mean, there is we definitely see this concept that Yoav, who was not a regular person. He definitely had logic behind what he did, and he wasn't just acting out of his own emotional interests and the personal interest. He was a great tzaddik in his own right, in a certain sense. I mean, he had, he was a great scholar as well. So to be continued, Rabbi Wernick.
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.